Hey guys, welcome back to the Tubes and Tires YouTube channel. As always, I'm Zach, and this week we're making up this custom floor pan for my street legal stock car, the C1 Chevelle.
Hey, is that Timmy's?
Yeah, because we're in Canada.
Okay guys, so if you've been following along in these past couple weeks, you know we went on power tour. We just finished fixing up the 54, but I think it's about time we get working on the Chevelle. So if you haven't been following along with this project, there is a whole playlist. You can go follow that. This is the street legal stock car build. But in this video, we're going to actually try to get a floor made up into it. So basically, it's going to be pretty simple. All the hard work is done. We've done all the floor bracing, so all we got to do is lay down some sheets. So I'm going to get this passenger seat out of here and a couple other odds and ends, and then I'll show you, once I climb in there, what we're going to be doing and, you know, how we're going to try to create everything in there. Lacey, you going to help too? Probably not. You're going to lay in your bed. Okay, guys, so we got the passenger seat out and we got the e-brake handle off. Those were basically just the two things that were in our way for, you know, figuring out these sheets. So I think the way we're going to go about this is I've got this hard ground cover or ram board or whatever. You can buy this stuff at like most hardware stores. It's pretty rigid that it will hold our shape the best. I do have to straighten it out a little bit, obviously, because it was in a roll. But it's going to give us the closest thing to what the sheet actually needs to look like. So what I need to do first is I'm going to take some soapstone. I'm going to mark some lines on where I want the sheet to actually run, because it's kind of funny in here. Obviously we're not doing any kind of factory floor pan, and the body is, you know, solid mounted to the frame. So we're actually going to be welding this floor pan thing directly to the frame, I guess is what the plan is here. I mean, if you ever had to do anything to this car, you'd be chopping it all apart anyways. So I'm just going to go mark some lines of where I want this floor pan to run. It's going to be kind of like a two-tiered thing. I don't know how to explain it, but basically, first sheet's going to go here, and then we're going to make like a stepped piece that's going to go from the rocker down, but we're going to focus on the big sections first, and then we're going to move on to that. So I'm going to start marking some lines, and then we're going to try to get that sheet cut so that we can start transferring it onto the steel stuff. Lacey? Oh, she's gone. So we got that template all made up and it's looking pretty sweet. Just took a little bit of time cutting around everything. Definitely marking lines on the far side over there helped a lot. But now what I think I'm going to do is we're going to make up the other three, and then we're going to actually move on to cutting some steel. I got to watch out because this one tries to jump on that because she thinks it's solid. So that's a thing. But I still have some more things to mark on there for the actual trailing arm, but I think we're going to do that once it's steel. So I'm going to get this all finished up here, and then we'll move on to actually laying it out and cutting some steel out. Lacey, you having a good old time, aren't you? Yeah. Okay guys, so we got these patterns all made up and they're looking pretty sweet. So I just have this steel that we're going to cut them out of. They're a little heavier than a 16th, but not quite an 8th, so it should be really sturdy for the floor. Lacey's already helping us lay out these patterns. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get a Sharpie. We're going to mark around these. The steel is obviously going to move different than the ram board, so we are going to have to do some final fitment with them, but it's going to get us really close to where we need to be. So I'm going to get you guys set up, and we're going to either cut this with the grinder or the plasma cutter, and we'll see about getting these things in the car. So let's get after it. Lacey, you going to help us cut anything? Probably not. You just like laying there. Okay guys, so we got both sides all cut out and they're looking pretty sweet. Basically now all I gotta do is go in, mark where the holes need to be for the seat. We do need to get underneath and mark some lines for where the trailing arm boxes need to be built. But first what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the holes made in the back sheets, put the seats in to know where the rails end basically, because that's what's gonna interfere for me, is these rails here. So I just need to know where they end, and then I can start the box from there. The front sheet's going to take a little more time to actually get into place because I need to bend it. And then I was contemplating on if I tried to bead roll them. The sheets are a little too thick to bead roll, so I would have to do some kind of hammer form. But I'm thinking what we're going to end up doing is we're just going to weld them down and then throw some sound detonating mat onto them because it's going to be fine, I think. So I'm going to get this to a point where these back sheets are probably pretty well ready to go in, other than the boxes we need to cut into them. And then we'll see about getting these front sheets all fit into here and then maybe weld it in. So I might come back to once we're doing some type of time lapse of getting them welded in here. Lacey's been really enjoying these patterns, and you know, I'm glad she is. They're going to good use. But that definitely worked out really awesome, is this ram board. To make those, I got it really close. I did have to do some cutting around these tubes here to actually make it fit in better and some other stuff like that. But a really great step in the right direction. So let's get fitting these sheets in. So I got all the floor pans spot welded in. It turned out pretty sweet. I know I only showed spot welding in the one side, but the other side was kind of tricky with the steering wheel and the shifter, so I figured, you know, we'd just show the easy side. But it's actually really sturdy. I was really worried that there was going to be like springiness to it, but since the material that I used, it's pretty thick. We don't have any of that, so I'm really happy with that. We are going to be putting sound detonating on this for anybody that's worried that it's going to be like a tin can. So I'm going to try to absorb some of the sound with that. But now that we got that done, we can move on to the center tunnel. So the back section is pretty easy because we're just going to put it onto these bars here. There's going to be that section that's going to stay. And we're actually going to make the front section removable, just in case if, say, you're on the road and you ever had to remove the transmission or do anything to that, we're going to make it so that it can come out. So basically what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to cut up some ram board and figure out my templates of what I need to cut out of steel, and then we can start bending it and try to fit it in place. It's going to take a little bit of time and finesse and stuff, but once we get it all figured out, it's going to be really sweet. So here we go. So we got all my templates made up for the center tunnel. They turned out pretty sweet. I did have to make them a little bit longer in some spots, like in the front and in the back, just because of the way this rounds and all the angles and stuff. I wanted to make sure that I got them cut to exactly where I wanted them, but you know, we took our time. It was the exact same process as what we did with the floor pan ones. Basically cut them out, fit them, see how they work out, but it's looking pretty sweet in there. We are going to make up that last one in there afterwards once this is made out of steel. I did have to make a wire buck to actually form this around in the front. So once we take these templates out of there, I'm going to show you that. It was just easier if I did this first and then talked about it. But just before we actually take those out, I just wanted to mention, I did forget to talk about these little bump outs we did back here for the rear trailing arms. They were pretty simple. I just took measurements on the sheets just before we welded them in. Just because we sagged out the suspension before, so I knew exactly where they were going to be if it ever did bottom out. So we're going to have plenty of clearance under the seat with those. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to take those templates out, mark them out on this sheet, and actually start cutting. But let's show you that, and then we'll start chopping up this piece of steel. Lacey, what's happening? So I got those patterns off, so you can see kind of what I mean by a wire buck. Some people like weld this. I just use Gorilla Tape and welding wire. You could probably use like coat hangers or something, but this just gave me the shape that I wanted, and I can make sure that all my linkages on the shifter were going to work. So basically what we're going to do is I think we're going to make the front one first. We're going to make this one, and then we'll make the panel in between that's going to fit. Don't walk on that! So I'm going to start marking out some stuff over there on that sheet, and then we'll start cutting it. Lace, you almost ruined it. How could you? Alright guys, so you just saw me cut out those two pieces of steel and mark them all out onto the sheet. So I've already fit the front one in, and I've done all the bending on that. That one was pretty tricky, so I thought I'd show you how I did it on the rear panel. So we did have to fit that front panel in first, and this rear one, so that we could fit the center one in between, just so I can see that my template is actually going to work, obviously because the steel moves differently than the cardboard. So this is only 18 gauge steel. It does bend pretty easy. I don't have a roller big enough here in the shop to actually roll this metal. I have a small little one. It's about, I don't know, I think it's like 15 inches wide, but it won't do what we want to do with this panel. So I've marked center on the top on this panel, and then same in the bottom. And then in the shop here, we got this big steel pole. So you can see that I've marked the center line on this pole. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to force this piece of steel around this, and this tube here is pretty close to the diameter of what we made those bars in the Chevelle. I do have a smaller pole over in the back of the shop that I do a little small tweaking on, but this one gets us pretty close for our initial round. So basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to mark up or place our center marks on the pole here, and then I'm just going to start just kind of giving her like this. And I'll get it as far as I can go. Alright, so we can move to the bottom. Okay. So basically I've got my first start of the round going on here. You know, it's not the prettiest thing. It does take some time to actually do this, so it's going to be a lot of walking back and forth to that other pole, back to the car, see where I have to bend it, see if we're even in the right area, and then, you know, just keep working it back and forth. The other one in the Chevelle actually has a flange bent on here. That was so that we could actually remove the front tunnel section, so that was even more tricky on how to like bend it and make it fit. So we are going to show you that with the center one on how I did that, but I'm going to start, you know, bending this one up a little bit more, and then we'll come back to once I got this a little bit more fit, I can show you what it looks like actually in the car. Whew, Lacey, what's going on? Alright guys, so I spent some time actually fitting up these panels into the car a little bit better. So we already had that front one in there. It's looking really sweet. You haven't seen it yet, so there it is. But here's that back one that we actually were just bending around the pole. So I already have it drilled for the spot welds. We got it screwed in there, so that's basically where it's going to be. I spent some time actually just fitting it because obviously the metal does move different than the cardboard. So just, you know, some fine tuning and trimming and figuring out how to get it in there, but it's looking pretty awesome. So we were able to refine the center panel in there. So I got it over here on the table. So you can see I just use tape to add to my pattern and trim off where I need to be. That's just an easy way to do it, and that way I don't have to make a whole new template. So that fit in there really awesome. So I thought I'd show you guys how I kind of go about actually marking this onto the sheet. So I just use a Sharpie just like everybody else, but when I lay this on there, because we already obviously have this, you know, cut out, you can see that our fitment is pretty tight to the template that we've made here. So all I do is once I've marked the lines, I just remember that you want to cut onto the inside of your Sharpie marks, and that way you get it as close to your template as possible. We are putting a flange onto this piece, so you can see that I have 1 inch marked on either side, and when we actually go to bend this thing on the metal brake, we're going to bend it on the inside of the Sharpie mark. So you just have to remember that if you're going to be bending onto this. So I'm going to bend that up because it's nothing too crazy, and then we're going to do the exact same process by bending it around the pole. We're going to be back and forth to the car, making sure that we can get this to fit, and then we'll get this screwed in there, and I'll show you what the tunnel looks like once we actually get it fit up. So here we go. Oh, Lacey the tightrope walker, is she going to do it? Come here. You can do it. We all believe in you. So we got that centerpiece of the tunnel put in there. You know, I took some time just fitting it in there. Basically from what I bent up and bent around the pole, it fit in there pretty well perfectly. We are going to have to trim some off on the back and the front just to make it so it goes in a little bit better, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. I did finish up this center tunnel at the front, so that took some time because it was kind of like a crazy compound curve. So basically, I made this out of a couple pieces, did the exact same process, you know, taped it together. So this was like my master copy, I guess you could call it. And then I made one off of that one, so that way then, you know, I knew exactly where I was going to be cutting out of my piece of steel, and then just bent it until it fit. And then I welded on that other lip on afterwards. But that comes in and out of there really nicely now. It's actually holding it together nice and stiff, so, you know, that's super cool. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to get this back one welded in. I just started tacking it in place just so it doesn't move around. But let's get to welding. Lacey, you got to get out of here. Here we go. Alright guys, so we got that back piece fully welded in there and it's looking really awesome. I couldn't be happier with this thing on how it's turned out. It's, you know, it's pretty nice for what it is. I already mocked up my e-brake handle over there, so that's going to work pretty sweet. I still have to finish off a few things like the flanges that are going to go on here and there, but I was actually waiting on a package from Amazon, but it said, what did it say? It said a problem has occurred, so I didn't get my package on time. I ordered a new riv nut gun, so basically we're going to get this so that it'll be fully removable, but for now, it is to a point where we can actually continue on something else that I want to do. I know I said that we were going to do some filler panels in here, but I think we're going to save that for another video. This was a bunch of work just to get to this point, but you know, all good things take time, and you know, I'm really happy on how this thing is turning out. So basically, I want to get to this point so that we can actually get a gas pedal into this thing. So I'm hoping the next video we're going to actually make this thing move. So since we got it to a point where we can actually put a driver's seat into it, so we're going to make this thing so it fires up on its own and I don't have to push it anymore. So that's just going to lead to better things so that we can actually get it onto the hoist, and I can actually start doing some stuff underneath. But little sneak peek on something really cool I bought here for the C1 Chevelle. Dang, look at that. Quick change rear end. So that's going to be coming up in the future as well. We're going to stick that thing into the car. But this thing is looking really awesome for what it is. So if you made it to this point in the video, I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching this stuff. But you're just going to have to stick around till next time to see what we come up with next on this car. So thank you guys once again. And as always, don't forget to salute the beaver. We'll catch you next time.